Have you ever wondered why Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, steward of more than $100 billion, says that some of his sharpest money lessons did not come from Wall Street, but from ordinary Chinese families? Imagine that. A man courted by the smartest financiers on earth still tips his hat to first-generation immigrants who once arrived with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. Look at the numbers. Chinese Americans represent roughly 6% of the U.S. population, yet their millionaire rate is almost 3 times the national average. An astonishing share of those fortunes emerged in a single generation, and with no flashy startup exits, just disciplined saving, patient investing, and habits rooted in 5 millennia of continuity. Clearly, they have cracked a code the rest of America keeps misplacing. Tonight, I will open the vault on 10 ancient practices that convert modest paychecks into multi-generational wealth. These are not hacks for getting rich quick. They are systems for keeping money, compounding it quietly, and handing it forward intact. They have survived dynasties, civil wars, and market crashes because they rely on human behavior, not market timing. If you absorb them, they will reorder the next 30 years of your life. Stay to the end, because Habit 10 will overturn everything you think you know about teaching children about money. A Shanghai clan I studied preserved its estate through 4 regime changes by mastering that single principle. Their grandchildren start businesses with dividends their great-grandfathers seeded during the Great Depression. Allow me a brief confession. I am 67, a billionaire several times over, battle-scarred by recessions that erased whole industries. Yet the moment that changed my financial DNA did not happen in a boardroom. It happened in a cramped Chinatown kitchen over a bowl of jasmine tea with a man named Mr. Lee. His words sliced through decades of corporate bravado and left me examining my own choices with surgical clarity. Before we step into his story, ask yourself 2 questions. If the world's most renowned value investor studies Chinese households, shouldn't you? And if 3,000 years of upheaval failed to erase these habits, what might they do for your next 3 decades? Decide, right now, to listen until the final sentence. The distance between your current life and the freedom you crave may be a single forgotten habit, hidden in a proverb, whispered by a grandmother, proven by numbers even Buffett cannot ignore. Ready? Let me introduce the most unassuming millionaire I have ever met and the first habit that secretly forged his empire. I climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs in Los Angeles Chinatown and knocked on a faded wooden door. Mr. Lee answered in a threadbare gray sweater and plastic sandals. The apartment behind him held a battered teak table, 2 chipped porcelain cups, and a sepia photograph of his parents. No marble counters, no designer sound system, nothing to suggest the man in front of me controls 8 apartment buildings, a collection of dividend aristocrats, and enough municipal bonds to endow a university chair. His net worth exceeds $40 million. He still drives a 2006 Toyota Corolla. I ask the obvious question: why stay here when you could live in Bel Air? He smiled as if the answer were self-evident. In the West, wealth is displayed. In China, wealth is stored. Then he recited a proverb his father drilled into him at 7. Wealth is like water in a basin. Those who splash it lose it. Those who guard it let it overflow. His story bore out the proverb. At 19, he earned minimum wage in a laundromat. Every Friday, before paying rent or buying groceries, he walked to the bank and deposited 30% of his paycheck into a plain savings passbook. Pay the future first, his father said, and he obeyed without fail. 10 diligent years later, that passbook funded a duplex. The duplex's cash flow bought another. Decades passed. Compounding turned frugality into a quiet empire hidden behind peeling paint. Did he ever feel deprived? He answered my question with his own. Which is the greater luxury, owning a Mercedes today or giving your grandchildren the freedom to choose any future they desire? The words struck me harder than any market crash. I thought of my penthouse renovations, the champagne-fueled nights, the applause fading as quickly as the taste of luxury. The man in plastic sandals towered over me in that moment, and I felt suddenly small. Habit 1 crystallized. Live beneath your means so dramatically that strangers misjudge your wealth, then invest the difference until misjudgment becomes legacy. Can you bear being underestimated for a decade if it grants your family financial invincibility for a century? That is the first brick in the fortress the Lees, and thousands like them, have been laying since the Han Dynasty. 8 more habits will raise your fortress higher. You've now seen the power of quiet frugality, the first brick in a dynasty's wall. But one brick does not make a fortress. Mr. Lee's success, and the success of thousands of families who look ordinary on the surface, yet command extraordinary balance sheets, rests on a lattice of habits woven so tightly that even chaos cannot pry them apart. Tonight, we will lay out that lattice, one strand at a time, so you can test each piece against your own life and decide which gaps to weld shut first. Habit 1 you already know: live far beneath your means and let outsiders guess wrong about your worth. Habit 2 will show why $1 spent on knowledge can out-earn $1 spent on any stock. Habit 3 reveals the mechanical trigger that turns intention into automatic wealth, the simple signal that orders your bank to pay your future before it pays your present. Habit 4 explains how time, not talent, makes the ordinary investor unbeatable. Habit 5 plants you on solid ground, literally, by converting shelter into an anchor asset. Habit 6 scales that anchor into a perpetual cash machine of roofs and rent checks. Habit 7 shifts your focus from salary to systems, so money keeps arriving even when you sleep. Habit 8 draws a bright red line between debt that fattens your heirs and debt that fattens your banker. Habit 9 unlocks guanxi, the compound interest of trust, where every relationship becomes a revenue stream of opportunity. And Habit 10, the crown jewel, equips children to guard the treasure better than we ever could, so each generation starts on the shoulders of the last instead of at the bottom of the hill. Why lay out the entire map now? Because the human mind learns best when it can see the whole shape of a journey before trudging through its valleys. I want you to picture these 10 habits as a circle, not a ladder. Break one link and the circle deforms, but still holds. Reinforce all 10 and the circle becomes a vault. Pause and take inventory. Which of these habits feel familiar? Which feel uncomfortable? Discomfort is the compass pointing to your greatest upside. The empire builders Mr. Lee's studies in ancient ledgers were not smarter, luckier, or better connected than we are. They simply obeyed timeless principles with monastic discipline. Their fortunes outlived wars, tyrants, inflation, and even family feuds because rules trumped moods. Before we dive into the second habit, make a private promise. As soon as one principle speaks to you, act on it within 24 hours. Knowledge unreleased into action rots like grain left in a damp silo. The farmer who hesitates loses the harvest. The saver who delays loses the compounding. Mr. Lee's apartment held a single indulgence, a tall, overstuffed bookcase bowed in the middle from decades of weight. Economics texts rubbed spines with biographies of emperors, manuals on plumbing repairs, and thick binders from night courses labeled Coding Fundamentals and Advanced Property Law. I teased him once, asking why a 70-year-old landlord needed to study blockchain protocols after dinner. His answer was pure arithmetic. One idea that saves me 1% in costs or earns me 1% in yield pays for 1,000 books. Ancient Chinese merchants understood this long before mutual funds existed. They called knowledge the only asset no thief can steal and no emperor can tax. Silver ingots could be confiscated at a city gate. A pricing insight whispered on a silk road could not. The modern proof is everywhere. The median worker who completes a certificate in data analytics raises lifetime earnings by 6 figures. The small business owner who masters TikTok advertising for free on YouTube doubles storefront traffic in a month. Return on tuition dwarfs return on treasury bills. I lived this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I balked at paying $20,000 for a negotiation seminar. Too expensive, I muttered, choosing instead to buy a new German sedan. 2 years later, I faced a takeover bid and misread a single clause. The error cost my company $14 million, 700 German sedans, each depreciating in real time. That humiliation snapped me awake. Since then, I earmarked 10% of gross income, never net, always gross, for education. Courses, conferences, coaches, tutors, language apps, subscriptions to academic journals, paid in advance like rent on a larger mind. Mr. Lee uses an even simpler system. Every January, he writes 2 checks, one to his future self in the form of index fund contributions, the other to his present mind in the form of tuition. If the market falls, the knowledge check remains. If rents dip, the knowledge check remains. Markets fluctuate, he said, but ignorance is a permanent bear market. Last year, his granddaughter wanted to learn robotics. He diverted a month of rental profit to her summer program. This year, she is patenting a low-cost prosthetic hand. That single allocation may yield more to the family estate than 5 apartment blocks. So ask yourself, when was the last time you paid for a skill that scares you? How many dollars flow each month to streaming services versus the courses that could upgrade your earning capacity? Pull up your banking app tonight and rename one category Wisdom Fund. Automate a transfer. Even $50 buys a textbook that reorganizes your brain. Build momentum. The amounts will scale. Habit 2 is the lever that magnifies every habit that follows. Without it, you are a steward of yesterday's knowledge investing in tomorrow's world. With it, you are a time traveler, borrowing insights from the future to make money in the present. Next, we'll turn that sharpened mind toward habit 3, the mechanical ritual that forces wealth to accumulate whether markets boom, bust, or drift. Picture your paycheck as a river and your goals as farmland downstream. Most people let the current spill wherever gravity pulls, bills, restaurants, impulse buys, then wonder why their crops wither. Chinese families turn the river upstream. The first water reserved is not for pleasure, not even for necessities. It is for seeds. Mr. Lee's father taught him a ritual as old as the Silk Road. The moment money touches your hands, divert a fixed share to investments before a single coin reaches the marketplace. Miss that window, and the mind invents endless needs to consume the surplus. At 19, Mr. Lee set the diversion at 30%. He opened 2 accounts, one labeled Never Touch for broad market index funds and dividend stocks, the other labeled Long Horizon for property down payments. Each Friday, the bank clerk stamped his passbooks while friends queued for movie tickets. In 1 year, he saved more than some co-workers earned. But the magic is psychological, not numerical. By moving capital out of sight, he deleted it from the mental budget. What remained felt like 100%, so his lifestyle adjusted painlessly inside new boundaries. I copied the system, but added automation. The instant revenue reaches my company treasury. A standing order sweeps 25% to a brokerage and 5% to a charitable foundation. My reminder that generosity must compound alongside wealth. Months when business is lean, the transfers still fire, forcing me to run a tighter ship instead of raiding savings. Economic winter will come. I prefer to prune habits early rather than beg mercy from creditors later. Skeptics argue they can't spare even 10%. Mr. Lee would hand them a scrap of paper and say, "List 3 expenses you would cut if your salary dropped tomorrow." Somehow the list always appears. The truth is brutal. We tolerate waste until discipline makes waste feel embarrassing. Once, Mr. Lee's laundry machine swallowed quarters for 6 straight hours before he noticed a jam. He spent the entire evening dismantling them himself, rather than paying an emergency technician. Every yuan I keep is a soldier that fights for me forever, he said, wiping grease from his palms. Tonight, audit your cash flow. Choose a percentage that feels serious, painful, yet sustainable. Log into online banking and schedule an automatic transfer the morning your paycheck arrives. Name the destination Future Freedom, not Savings, because language shapes behavior. Tomorrow, you will wake up poorer on paper, but richer in trajectory. Over time, the torrent you redirected will carve a canyon of capital so deep, no drought can empty it. In a courtyard behind Mr. Lee's first duplex, grows a camphor tree planted by the previous owner 90 years ago. Its trunk is thick as a bank vault door, branches shading 3 properties. When I admired it, Mr. Lee smiled. The original planter never sat under this canopy, but my tenants do every afternoon. Wealth behaves the same way, slow at the start, vast at maturity, generous to people you may never meet. Western culture glorifies speed, day trading dashboards, flipping houses, viral IPOs. Chinese stewards embrace patience, the quiet arithmetic of compound growth. Mr. Lee illustrated with 2 coins. One doubles every decade, the other chases fashionable returns, gaining 50% some years and losing 40% others. After 40 years, the steady coin, though seemingly sluggish, outstrips the gambler, because compounding punishes volatility and rewards consistency. Markets are voting machines in the short term and weighing machines in the long term. Time is the scale that exposes truth. Early in my career, I itched for quick wins. I bought an airline stock on margin, made 40% in a week, then watched a labor strike erase the gains plus half my principal. Decades later, the same capital, left in an index fund, would have quadrupled without a minute of worry. The lesson cost 7 figures. Cheap tuition for a billionaire, devastating for an average household. Mr. Lee avoided the sting by purchasing assets he was willing to hold forever. Dividend aristocrats, government bonds laddered for predictable cash flow, apartments in neighborhoods with growing populations and fixed supply zoning. Patience turned modest rentals into a portfolio worth tens of millions while he brewed oolong and read history. Time also magnifies skills acquired under habit too. A language learned at 30 compounds into 50 years of cross-border deals. A public speaking course taken at 40 multiplies influence every week thereafter. When you view life through the lens of decades, the return on slow investments eclipses any thrill from fast money. To enlist time on your side, adopt 3 practices. Define a horizon longer than your ego. Decide what you want your balance sheet to do for great-grandchildren you will never meet. Choices shift immediately. Measure progress in years, not weeks. Review holdings quarterly for discipline, but judge success only every 5 years. Short intervals breed panic. Long intervals reveal patterns. Automate reinvestment. Reinvest dividends, rental surplus, and business profits without pause. A seed replanted becomes an orchard. Time can be your greatest ally or a merciless creditor. It ignores charm, hustle, and market gossip. It rewards structure and tenacity. Stand still, and it buries you in opportunity cost. Plant seeds, and it crowns you with shade you may never need, but your heirs will cherish. The first property Mr. Lee bought was not glamorous. A tired 2-bedroom bungalow with sagging gutters and wallpaper yellowed by time. Friends urged him to wait, to save for something newer, something worthy of celebration photos. He ignored them, wrote the down payment check, and took possession on a wet February morning. A roof that leaks on my head, he joked, is still a roof that shelters my wealth. Chinese families have revered land since the Zhou dynasty because land is the one asset human beings cannot manufacture. Empires inflate currencies, technologies leapfrog, fashions expire, yet soil remains stubbornly finite. Owning a slice, however small, turns you from renter of destiny into landlord of possibility. Every mortgage payment transmutes from expense into equity, quietly converting labor into stone. Western culture often treats a home as a trophy, but the Lees treat it as an anchor. An anchor keeps a ship stable during storms. A primary residence does the same for personal finance. It forces disciplined savings each month, hedges against rising rents, and, crucially, establishes borrowing credibility. A banker who doubts your business plan will still respect a deed in your name. I learned this late. In my 30s, I chased yield in exotic derivatives while renting a penthouse I could have bought for less than a year's trading gains. When the 2008 tsunami hit, paper profits vanished overnight, landlords raised rents, and liquidity dried up like a desert creek. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee's modest bungalow, long since paid off, rose gently in value and, more important, provided psychological ballast. While I negotiated margin calls, he attended his granddaughter's piano recital, certain the family's bedrock was safe beneath their feet. Skeptics argue that property ties you down. Mr. Lee counters with an older truth. Mobility without roots is drift, not freedom. A home does not imprison ambition, it fertilizes it. From the security of shelter, you plan longer, risk wiser, think generationally. Even if you later relocate, retaining that first property turns nostalgia into rental income, an act of memory that pays dividends. The math is persuasive. Suppose you buy a $300,000 home with 20% down at 4% interest. In 10 years, moderate appreciation and principal reduction can create $150,000 in equity. Equity accessible for education, medical emergencies, or entrepreneurial ventures. Renters must beg a bank or an uncle. Owners borrow from their own balance sheet. Tonight, assess your housing situation with brutal honesty. If you already own, resolve never to sell impulsively. View the house as a family bond yielding safety and optionality. If you rent, draft a plan, timeline, budget, neighborhood metrics for acquiring a starter property. It need not impress Instagram. It must simply convert monthly payments from sunk cost to forced investment. The bungalow taught Mr. Lee two lessons. Tenants exist everywhere, and roofs demand constant attention. He embraced both. Rather than flip his first house for a quick profit, he refinanced the growing equity and purchased a duplex 3 streets over. Rent from one unit covered the new mortgage. The second unit flowed straight into a maintenance reserve and savings for property number 3. Thus began a virtuous cycle. Equity begets leverage. Leverage acquires shelter. Shelter births cash flow. Many investors chase aggressive appreciation, but Chinese landlords favor durability. Mr. Lee chose neighborhoods with steady job bases, hospitals, universities, ports, ignoring glossy developments fueled by speculation. He inspected foundations personally, walked the block at night to gauge safety, interviewed future neighbors over tea. This diligence made his portfolio boring, and boredom is fertile ground for compounding. During recessions, his occupancy dipped only slightly. When markets boomed, he raised rents modestly, preferring loyalty over turnover. The result, after 4 decades, 8 buildings, 92 doors, and an income stream that laughs at recessions. His second principle is moral as well as practical. Treat tenants like partners. Leaky faucet, fixed within 24 hours. Broken heater, same day. Each December, he mails handwritten thank you cards with a small gift card for groceries. Cynics scoff at the expense until they see his retention rate. 85% of leases renew, saving thousands in vacancy costs and marketing. One tenant, a plumber, now services the entire portfolio at discount rates. Another, a graphic designer, rebranded his property management company for free. Guanxi begins at home. Risk management completes the triad. Mr. Lee carries ample insurance, maintains 6 months of operating expenses in cash, and staggers loan maturities so no more than one note resets in a single year. He prefers fixed-rate debt, sacrificing a fraction of upside to eliminate the nightmare of variable spikes. When interest rates plummeted in 2020, He refinanced cautiously, keeping term lengths aligned with building age. A roof nearing replacement should not secure a 30-year loan, he says. Tie long debt to young assets, short debt to old. I adopted his template at 50. My first rental, a weathered triplex, felt insignificant next to my tech holdings, yet its monthly cash flow soon exceeded dividend checks from a 7-figure stock position. More importantly, tenants paid down principal while I slept. Today, 15 buildings across 3 states send in rent on the 1st of every month, cushioning market swings and underwriting adventures my younger self never dared. Scaling through stone and mortar is not glamorous. It involves clogged drains at midnight, spreadsheets of HVAC lifespans, and the discipline to reinvest surplus instead of celebrating prematurely. But the payoff is sovereignty, income unlinked from your labor and assets as tangible as gravity. Salary is oxygen, vital but invisible once you breathe it. Mr. Lee never confused oxygen with the mountain he meant to climb. Early in his career, he asked one question before accepting any new role. Will this teach me a skill that can someday pay me without my presence? If the answer was no, he declined, even when the paycheck was larger. He moonlighted repairing washers at the laundromat, not for the extra dollars, but to understand maintenance economics. He volunteered in the bookkeeping office to learn double-entry accounting. Each capability became a gear in a machine that earned while he slept. By 40, he had 5 income streams: rents, dividends, a small vending machine route, royalties from a niche patent, and profit shares in a cousin's import business. None on its own was spectacular. Together, they formed a woven rope. When one strand frayed, the others tightened. During the dot-com crash, his stock dividends shrank, but snack sales at the port surged because nervous dock workers bought comfort food. Abundance, he discovered, is less about any single gush of cash and more about multiple steady trickles that never dry at the same time. At my firm, we institutionalize this principle. Each product line now spawns a complementary side stream: support contracts, licensing deals, data subscriptions. The goal: no single customer, no single market, no single continent can jeopardize the mission. Think of your own life. What hobby, certification, or leftover competence could you spin into even a modest monthly check? $100 passively earned is worth more than 1,000 earned once, because it proves the model can scale. Debt is fire. Tame it and you forge steel. Neglect it and you scorch the village. Mr. Lee kept 2 jars on a shelf labeled productive and destructive. Each time he considered borrowing, he pictured dropping the loan into one jar or the other. Productive debt bought assets that paid him back, roofs that collected rent, equipment that printed revenue, education that raised lifetime earnings. Destructive debt bought anything that rusted, rotted, or went out of style. When Mr. Lee's grandson received his first red envelope gift, the boy was 4. Together they split the bills into 3 glass jars: spend, save, share. The amounts were tiny, crisp singles, but the ritual engraved neural pathways more valuable than any inheritance. At 8, the child tracked envelope inflows on a spreadsheet, projecting how long it would take to afford a telescope. At 12, he was compounding part-time earnings in a custodial index fund. Chinese families grasp a paradox Western culture forgets. Assets without acumen rot in the hands of heirs. So lessons begin as soon as a child can count. They watch adults negotiate grocery discounts, witness rent collection, listen to dinner table debates about interest rate risk. Money talk is not taboo, it is apprenticeship. In our next deep dive, we fly to Japan, where concepts like kakebo, the art of mindful savings, and mujin, community credit circles, forge prosperity without fanfare. Even seasoned Chinese investors take notes. Join me, and let's keep planting forests together. Until then, guard your basin, grow your water, and may your legacy overflow.
someone kill